Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the difference between arguments and conditional statements. And this is the last of a series on additional techniques for identifying arguments. So to start to get a handle on this distinction, we first want to look at conditional statements. What is a conditional statement? Okay. So take a look at the examples on the right-hand side of the slide. That is items 3 through 5. The first one reads, if we don't leave in the next 10 minutes, we'll be late. The second reads, it's a great place to eat if you can find a table. And the last one reads, Ghostface Killah is a member of the Wu-Tang Clan so long as he hasn't been kicked out yet. So each of these claims, or each of these passages, I should say, expresses just a single claim. And they're claims that can be articulated with an if-then structure. Okay, so in 3 and 4, the if-then structure is pretty clear, but in 5, it's a little less clear. Nonetheless, it's still there in 5. Saying Ghostface Killah is a member of the Wu-Tang Clan so long as he hasn't been kicked out yet is a way of saying if Ghostface Killah hasn't been kicked out yet, he's still a member of the Wu-Tang Clan. Okay. Now, the reason why some people get confused and read passages like these as if they were themselves arguments is that they notice that if-then structure has a relationship that's very similar to the relationship between a premise and a conclusion. Okay, so that's correct. There is a similar structure. It involves an A part, the whatever follows the if, and a B part, whatever follows the then. Okay, and that relation is similar to the relation between premises and conclusions, because what a conditional claim is saying is that whenever the first part of the if-then statement holds, then the second part does as well. So in a way, it looks like, what it's saying is that that the first part provides a reason to believe the second part. Okay. But notice that there's a big difference between conditional claims and arguments. The first big difference is that conditional claims are just single claims, whereas arguments, by definition, always involve 2 or more claims, because some of the claims have to be offered as support for other claims in arguments, right? Unless there's a support relation between 2 different claims, then you can't have an argument. And conditional claims just on their own, each conditional claim, each if-then statement is a single statement or a single claim. So what's going on? There's a similarity of structure, but there's also this difference that conditional statements are just single claims or single statements, whereas arguments are always 2 or more statements. So what's going on? Okay, well, what's going on is that a conditional statement is making a claim about a relation between possible ways that the world can be. Okay, so if you think about it, an if-then statement is saying that whenever the first part holds or is true, then the second part is also true. Okay, it's making a claim about relation. You could say, another way to put it is you could say it's making a claim about relations between claims. Okay, but still the claim that is being made in a conditional statement is just one. And one of the ways to see very clearly that that must be the case is to ask yourself whether in making a conditional claim, the author is asserting the A part or the B part. And the answer is they're not asserting those things, right? So if you look at 3 more closely, the author of this claim, the author of this passage is not saying we don't leave in the next 10 minutes, right? You can't take the A part of this conditional claim outside of, you can't extract it from the whole conditional claim and treat it as a single thing that's being asserted, okay? And the reason you can't do that is because it's not being asserted in this passage. What's being asserted is the relation between 2 possible ways the world can be. The way that it can be where we don't leave in the next 10 minutes, and the way that it can be where we'll be late. Okay, and it's saying anytime we don't leave in the next 10 minutes, or in any case where we don't leave in the next 10 minutes, sometimes the way it's put is in any world where we don't leave in the next 10 minutes, then that will also be a world where we'll be late. Okay, it's talking about a relationship between possibilities. It's not saying we don't leave in the next 10 minutes, right? And then if you compare that to the examples of arguments on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that the A parts and the B parts in each of these claims, they can in fact be pulled apart, and they can be treated as things that the author is asserting independently. So in the first one, the author is asserting unwashed hands can carry dangerous bacteria, and they're asserting that as a reason to believe a further assertion that you should wash your hands before eating. Okay, so the A part and the B part are both being affirmed in example 1 on the left-hand side of the screen. And likewise in example 2, both the A part and the B part are being affirmed as true. So again, that's very different from what you have in the case of the conditional statements on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, just like we have a name for the A part and the B part in arguments, we have a name for the A part and the B part in conditional statements. The A part we call the antecedent, and the B part we call the consequent. And it's important to, you don't have to you should understand what those terms are now. You'll need that understanding in order to complete the problem sets. But we're going to come back and actually appeal to that terminology or use that terminology periodically throughout the course. So yeah, it's a good thing to get a handle on now that we can refer to the part that follows the if, just the part that follows the if in an if-then statement as the antecedent, and the part that follows the then in an if-then statement as the consequent. And sometimes it takes a little bit of work to identify the antecedent and the consequent. So for instance, in the example 5, right, the antecedent is going to be Ghostface Killer hasn't been kicked out yet. Because what's being said is if he hasn't been kicked out yet, then he's still a member. And or if he hasn't been kicked out yet, then he is a member, okay, of the Wu-Tang Clan. So in 5, the antecedent is Ghostface Killer hasn't been kicked out of the Wu-Tang Clan yet, and the consequent is Ghostface Killer is a member of the Wu-Tang Clan. Okay. So what I've given you in this slide is a summary of some characteristics of arguments and of two things that are often confused with arguments but are not themselves arguments, namely explanations and conditional statements. And I've given you I've given you an indication of what the terminology is for the A and B part of each of these things, and what the characteristics of each are, and some examples of each. So hopefully, as a kind of review, you could look at this slide, and I hope that overall these videos have been helpful in distinguishing these different kinds of things that can appear in the examples that we'll be looking at. It will be very useful, really essential, to be able to distinguish between these things as we go forward.